Today we're looking at a blast from our past and this video channel's past. You might have remembered this Martin O-18 from 1940 that we previously did a video on. It has gotten some tender TLC that it needed. We're going to talk about it, so stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you want to support us, visit our spring store link below for custom swag and check out our podcast, The Fretboard Confessional. So we did a video on this when we first got this guitar. It's a very, very cool guitar. 1940 Martin O-18 with the burst, which makes it even more rare. And it was a very, very cool guitar, and it allowed us the opportunity to talk about the truth of most vintage instruments. So this is a great kind of come back around and finish that story situation. But if you don't remember that first video, you should go back and watch it. It's very cool. The guitar sounded great. You had it tuned to what, C?
It was like C, yeah, C or C sharp.
And it was necessary because of some of the structural images that were, or issues that were going on with this. It had cobwebs and spider webs and mud dauber nests inside. It'd probably been hanging in some barn from the looks of things. And this guitar was purchased, and it gets a new lease on life. And so it's kind of cool to kind of talk about what it was and what it's been through. And
it was super cool when we got it. There was some cracks on the bridge, and the neck angle was a little bit way off, and so
a little bit
way off, and so we didn't necessarily feel super comfortable tuning it up to standard pitch. However, few things have happened on this guitar since then. It took a little trip. Namely, it got a neck reset with hide glue, which is cool. Got a new bridge. It did get absolutely cleaned out, so there are no mud dauber nests in here anymore. But you know, the buyer of this guitar wanted the work done before he got it back. So he luckily let us take the time to make sure it happened right. Thankful to the people at Martin that did work on this guitar. Thankful to Casey Jones, who is in our store, that did some work on this guitar. So it's finally here, and before we ship it off to Steven very soon, kind of wanted to just play it for you and see, yes, it was a little bit of a wait. It was a little bit of money for the repairs, but it now will play great for, its lifespan got extended very, very long.
Well, and it illustrates a few things. One, the talent and craftsmanship that is available with really good technicians like Casey, and what Martin can do. There is a downside, and that is Martin is very, very busy. And so it really behooves most of us to rely on the talented technicians that are local to us, if you're fortunate enough to have them. But you can bring a guitar back. The other part of the discussion, though, this is what we talked about in the first video. If you're looking at a vintage guitar, you often have to bring the guitar back. Most of the guitars that you see available on the vintage market, if we're just completely honest, weren't often very well taken care of. Sometimes they were flat out abused. Sometimes it was just neglect, which I think was the case with this guitar. Electric guitars often have less need. Generally it's electronic stuff or something going on with hardware. But acoustic guitars in particular, because they're solid wood instruments and wood still wants to be a tree and you have humidity and all sorts of stuff, they tend to have more warts that come with them. And so they are a special thing. I think we kind of mystify vintage instruments somewhat, and in some cases to great extent on purpose and with need. This guitar is special. Even as it's come back and before it was shipped off, we picked it up and you could feel the lightness and the responsiveness of the guitar simply because of its age. 80-plus-year-old guitar, it opened up is like an understatement. You know?
It's wide open by
now. It's wide open. But and this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If you look at, say, some of Nashville's best vintage guitar shops, which is Gruen and Carter's, right? what you'll often see are two different types of vintage guitars that they're advertising, and you could take a look on their website. You'll have vintage guitars that have gone through that process already, and you'll have vintage guitars that have not gone through that process already, in which case they've outlined what it needs. And so it's the purchase and then the cost to give it that new lease on life. And that's the reality of vintage guitars.
And there's kind of the third, maybe not sad option, but vintage guitars that needed certain work done to them and were completely changed into something that is totally different.
Where it's no longer really a vintage guitar.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, guitars, I like to think that guitars don't necessarily die, but at a certain point, there's not really an easy way.
It's like the ship of Theseus.
But one thing that I really appreciated that the buyer of this guitar wanted was to completely preserve the aesthetic look of everything. There was no,
refinishing.
No attempt to refinish anything. The shade top has awesome checking in it. None of that stuff was touched. So it was done, I think, really in the right way, which was do the structural things the right way to make it play as perfect as possible. And and it sounds really nice. You will notice in the demo, I'm still kind of playing it with a light touch, and that's partly because I don't own the guitar. Partly because I don't think I've ever played. Besides the Martin Museum, I have not really played a ton of guitars this old, and I really I'm a little nervous, if you can tell. But it feels great. I mean, it's almost wild just to see it with a brand new set of strings and actually tune it up, and it stays in tune and it sounds great, and it's so light, vibrates all over. Just a really special thing. So before we shipped it out, we wanted y'all to see. I mean, I think that it's been at least 8 months. I think. Long wait, and I think it was worthwhile for Steven, and I really hope he enjoys it when he gets it. So take a listen.
So there you have it. So one of the things you talked about right before the demo is something that I want to stress, and it was one of the very first questions that I had when the discussion came up of having the work done. And I said, is Steven wanting it refinished? And I was hoping no, and I was very glad the answer was no.
Yeah.
Because One of the things, and again, it's a PSA, just a public service announcement for my very strong opinion on the subject. If you want a new guitar, buy a new guitar, okay? If you have something that is vintage, there's something special about it. That patina that's on that hardware and that's in that finish and the cracks that have taken place over time, that's just part of what makes the guitar special. It's the age, of what it is. Don't go give the guitar a facelift, Pay attention to Hollywood. They rarely come out looking okay, So I'm glad that it got the structural changes that it needed and nothing else. That's ideally how vintage guitars should be approached. Not a big fan of trying to make them brand new again. There's plenty of great new guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get yourself an O-18 right now. It's going to be cool, and it's going to be in spirit very similar to what this one is. There are a few things about this guitar that are just cool and special. I love the fact that when they did the neck reset, it's with the hide glue. They did it as it's supposed to be done. But I will also say, yes, we kind of made the decision between us, Casey, who is our tech in-house, and Steven, some of the stuff, to be handled by Martin because they have it kind of feels right to have this one handled by Martin, for the most part. Casey did do some stuff to it, but we have some other guitars in here that are old guitars that Casey's been working on. There's a lot of unforeseen things that can happen.
Well, it's like doing a house renovation.
Yeah.
You never know till you pull back.
Sometimes you take the drywall off and termites have been in the
or there's a tree growing.
Yeah, for sure. And like we have one right now that ideally you and I can maybe we have some before pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a rebinding job on a Gibson 12 string, and when part of the binding was removed, everything crumbled and the entire guitar was being held together.
Turns out that's all that was holding it together. Yeah.
And so there are a lot of unforeseen things. So if you find a piece, or if you have an heirloom guitar that belonged to, a grandparent or a parent, sometimes there's a lot more that needs to get done. I'm really happy that this one, for the most part, it wasn't a ton that needed to happen. It was just some of the key structural parts.
They did such a good job. The setup on it's so good.
It's really nice. But yeah, don't be afraid to, if you have a guitar and you're local to us, bring it in. We can tell you what we think needs to happen, and then also be forewarned that maybe something else comes up. But oftentimes I find that with the right person getting it on the bench, it ends up being something that, like I said, just extends the lifespan, and really this guitar will, continue on for a very, very long time and probably be much better taken care of than it was before.
You know what I love about vintage guitars? So I love playing them, but I love examining them because one of the things that you notice is what's different over a modern guitar construction. Like with this guitar, the frets are so small. Mm-hmm. It just, you wouldn't typically see that. And it's not from wear, it's just all the way up the neck. The frets are so small, and the design of the tuners is unique. But then there's stuff about the history. Like there's this particular pattern on the back of the guitar, and it makes me go, I bet a previous owner had one of those big cowboy belt buckles, because it sits right there, and it looks like, that's kind of what happened. It's a wonderful guitar. Vintage guitars are great. Vintage guitars are what they are. Understand and approach them accordingly. You can have a wonderful instrument.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing cheap about them. No. Even if you find a cheap, there's a good bit. Even if you find a cheap vintage guitar, that's going to be an expensive vintage guitar to get it up to snuff. It's just how it goes. So
yeah,
pretty awesome.
Very cool. But yeah, I'm glad we got it in the studio before it goes out to kind of show you what can be done with some good technicians that are that know what they're doing, and it's a joy to play.
So we're on the lookout for stuff all the time. If you've been looking for a particular vintage guitar, let us know. We're getting some cool stuff in the shop, and we're always looking for some things, so we may be able to uncover that diamond in the rough for you. But also, if you have something like Cooper was saying, we can help you deal with whatever the warts are on it and make sure that you have a great playing guitar that you can enjoy rather than just brag about owning. So yeah. Anyways, if you're new to our channel, and you like this video or anything else we've done, make sure that you subscribe, you turn on notifications, you like our videos, and you keep coming back for more, and we'll see you next time.